having such a hard time relating to them now. And where I'm at, like, the reason why I say that is, you know, there was something that really was profound that shifted last Saturday, specifically, deeply profound. And as I shared on Anana, because I didn't realize how many verses it was in there. I mean, I'd seen it before, but I'd never, I guess it just, I wasn't drawn to go study out all the verses that Anana was in. And I don't know why I wasn't, because other than the fact that I got it up here, I got the idea of it here, but it hadn't dropped down. It was still up here. And so when I went in and discovered all the verses where Anana was at, and how the programming within our Christian narratives, and, you know, I know Jeannie didn't get indoctrinated like most of us did with the writings, and she's very fortunate. And I'm sure, hi, Vanessa. I'm sure that, you know, in some ways it's like a blessing and not a blessing, because sometimes when we're discussing these things, if we don't have that background, you know, you can kind of lose a lot of context. But yet, Jeannie, because you didn't get programmed, you didn't get indoctrinated. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we interact with a lot of people that have a strong Christian faith, and whether it's coming from Calvinism or, you know, whatever camp they're from. And yes, it does affect everything. And anyway, in going through there, something really profound shifted in me when I went through those verses. And then when I shared them with everybody, it was like it went into hyperdrive. And so when I come on here and say I'm having a hard time relating to the verses and to the words, I'm going to show you what the Ruka de Kucha said for me to do today. Now, it's don't freak out when I'm doing this, but I'm going to show you what the Ruka de Kucha said to do. All right, I'm going to show you my Song of Solomon 1:5.
Oh, this is the one, Dark Amon.
Mm-hmm.
This is the one I did the
You did the poetic summary, the one that's, I think, is on the main page.
It's on the main page, yeah.
Of YouTube.
Yeah.
All right. This is what I was supposed to do. Did you guys see what I just did? I have to sit with that for a moment. Now, obviously, I didn't hit the save button, because if I did, it would have wiped out all of my work. And probably that's what I was supposed to have done. But I can't quite do that yet. Ooh.
This is a real thing that's happening right now. That, and again, if you didn't get what she just did, she was told to hit the delete. Okay. Right. So, because what we're moving into, and I'm just buying time until you get your bearings on you, until you can just say I'm good. But this is exactly similar to what I've been shown too. Is like I have to step off of where I've been, because I don't think it's been really a service. But specifically for the two of us, we are at the place in time right now where it's actually saying to put away all books. No, we're talking from where we are, all sharing from where we are. All books are to be put away, and everything's moving into the absolute of your own storyline. You will be speaking from your place of your absolute truth, your level of knowing. You don't need to recall. You don't need to have any prompting. You are the absolute of your absolute. You are the fulfillment as you've removed all doubt, and from that you speaking your certainty. That's what it's saying right now.
And it was a plastics company, and it was really interesting because on this plastics company, they had all these little white beads, and they put it in a hopper, and they only put like three.
I remember that.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Like 3 black beads. And how many? Thousands.
There were thousands.
Whites?
Yeah, it was the whole batch. It was thousands and thousands.
Like, and when they whatever they did, when it came out, you thought maybe it would be like a little tainted color, you know, maybe in a light gray. No, it was entirely black. And in this hopper with thousands and thousands of these white beads, only 3 made the entire thing black. Only 3. So the reason why I was trying to compose myself here is I remember when I'm just talking, guys, I'm just sharing some heartfelt stuff, because this is what I'm stirring at. And we are going to go into the Song of Solomon, because there is a point that I want to make on this, and we're going to finish out Song of Solomon 1:5, and then we're going to chat, and hopefully I can do it in an hour and 15 minutes so that we can take a break before Ken shares. But what I just did with deleting the words off the page reminded me when I integrated all of my multiple personalities that I was dealing with. So when I got to the end of my dark night of the soul, and I was in that place where integration needed to be the next step. Like I had swept out all of the really intense stuff that had caused me to fracture out, and I had swept through all of those things. And I remember the day where I literally had to say goodbye to those pieces of me. And it felt, wow, shit. Still having a hard time talking about it.
You feel like you're losing your
because it's beautiful. These aren't sad tears. These are beautiful tears. It's just kind of to put it to words, because it's so deeply personal. I had to say goodbye to them. But what I didn't realize was I wasn't really saying goodbye. I was saying welcome home. There was a big difference. But I had to go through the words, and I remember addressing each one. And the hardest one would have been what you would have called my Lilith side. I called her not me, not me. And it's funny because not me was very masculine in energy, not feminine, extremely masculine in energy. And I remember that was like the last one that I had to deal with. The other ones were easier. The other ones, like they were just easier. They were a lot easier, but that one was the one that saved my life many times and protected me. And I remember having to say goodbye, and I honored them. And this is the thing that is really kind of getting me, because I get it now. I'm like fully comprehending this. I honored them for the role that they played. I mean, I literally addressed them for the role they played, the personality, everything that when they would show up and why they showed up, I honored them. I honored them with my words. It was like I needed to hear it and I had to feel it in order to integrate it. And so I honored them. And when it came to not me, I had to sit on it for quite a bit because it was scary. It felt really scary. Like, what was I going to do without having that shield? We could talk about the greatest psyop. And I remember when I said goodbye, is when I realized, when I fully began to realize, it was like I began to touch what integration, which really was about, because I hadn't walked through the fullness of that until last week. I had only just touched it. I had just tasted it, what it was like. And it was that sense of, I'm going to lose something. But what I realized is that in the sense of letting go and losing, I gained everything. I didn't lose anything. In fact, there was a greater revealing and a greater measure of what I received in simply just letting go. And so coming to Anana again was like, oh my God, I get it now. So when Ken has talked about master and servant, and we've talked about the ego bowing to the master, there's that place in time where you come face to face with yourself and you say goodbye, but you're really saying hello. Mm-hmm. And you're really saying, I see you. like for the first time I see you. And it goes both ways. Like the ego for the first time sees Anana, and Anana is then recognizing and honoring the strength of the ego and how it served Anana coming face to face. And it's really wrecking, but it's a necessary step to embrace Anana, so that in all of our transactions that we have with other selves, we can then truly honor them, because we honored ourself. I honored Carrie. I honored the journey of Carrie. I honored everything that Carrie as this avatar, as the separated ego experienced, in order to let go of it, so that I wasn't holding on to any of the attachments of the ego. So now I want to take us into the Song of Solomon. And then we're going to talk a little bit at the end, and I'm probably going to go faster than I have before, because like I was saying with you guys at the beginning, having a hard time relating to some of these things now. I can still teach from that place, but I'm realizing that as I teach from that place, it's almost like I have to step back in the ego to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm putting, okay, let me back up here. All of this blackness on the page, this black fire, is ego related. Anana doesn't need any of it. That's why I said, select all, delete. That's Anana. And as soon as I put anything on this page, I've defined it. I've begun to program it, because the only thing that cares about the black fire is the ego, because it has to run a program in order to be in this. And we attach everything to it. And so we'll go painstakingly through everything that we see here on the pages and all the words, and we're trying to figure things out, and the ego's trying to figure it out, trying to make its way, trying to relate. And we just keep programming ourselves.
It's touching the whiteboard.
Yeah. And we keep freaking programming ourselves. So I am not saying that there's not value in the words on this paper, because it was the words on the paper that helped me translate myself to find Anana. And some of us can do the delete and wipe it off rapidly, but some of us are going to take a little bit longer, and both are fine. Every soul's journey is going to be different for that unique expression of Anana. Because Anana is what is embodying the avatar. Well, this avatar has a unique expression that calls herself Carrie, or was literally called Carrie. This avatar was called Carrie by my family, by my parents. I didn't choose it. They called me that. They programmed me with that name. Because the truth is, Anana. So, hold on. We went for a walk this morning, and I was recalling something that happened to me when I was younger. And I'm hoping that maybe you guys can identify with this. If you can't fully identify with Anana yet, like I said before, Anana was up here. Like I began to comprehend Anana in my mind, because that's how it engages, because that's Hillel. Hillel puts in the ideas. So when I'm looking at the words on the page, Hillel is communicating to me through electricity. Ideas are electricity, and is taking the black fire in order to identify the dark of me. Self.
Translation.
Ego. In order for me to translate it so that I can turn it, so there is no more shadow. There is no more ego. Shadow is ego. I'm going to say that one more time. Shadow is ego. That's it. And in our shade, in our darkness, we are ignorant to who we are. Anana. I had someone a long time ago have a conversation with me, and it was probably one of the most infuriating conversations I had in my life, and probably one of the most desperate feeling wise that I had ever experienced. And it came to my mind today as I was talking with Ken on our walk. We had a lot of quiet today when we were walking. It was just a lot of quiet. And it was when we were on the home stretch. Imagine that, on the home stretch, that we began to converse a little bit. And I recalled this conversation. And this person was sitting with me and looked at me and just asked me this: who are you? And I said, well, I'm Carrie. And he said, no, that's your name. Who are you? And kept trying to pull something out of me that I couldn't see yet. And I remember that feeling in my gut of just being bound tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter, because he was trying to pull something from me and I had no way of even comprehending what he was saying. It was like, Rick, when you were talking about that time with the person when you had them sit in the chair and they were sitting in the chair and you would tell them to sit and they're like, but I am. And you're like, I told you to sit. And in the frustration of that, and you're like, because you already are. That's what I'm trying to say. Stop trying to sit down. You already are. And that whole thing about the Neo and Morpheus again, it all came up. Stop trying to hit me and hit me. Depending on your perception and your perspective of who you are is going to determine how everything is projected outside of you. Now let's get into the word. Breathing through it. I believe that last time we talked before Anana, we were talking about Jerusalem and the beauty of what Jerusalem is and all of that, and the two words that are compounded. But I wanted to move on from that today because I wanted to talk about the last ones, like the tents of Kedar, like the curtains of Solomon. And we're not gonna go so deep today because I'm seeing like I don't need to go deep. I'll have the document, you guys can look at it, but for translation assistance. But there's a couple points, there's a couple things I really want you to see in this that I'm like, oh my gosh, yes. Like the tents, Kohel. Oh my God, I'm having such a hard time today. It just seems like words are just so limiting.
Well, that's exactly where we are right now, is that it will be more the feeling of what we are in the expression, and that's the organicness, that's what's coming. The vibrational. Tuning of the teacher.
What it is. The reason why I'm having a hard time is I don't want to limit the expression of you. Because that's what I'm trying to say to you guys. Although it took the word to translate me, to translate the self, to find Anana, why I'm wrestling with it is because when I draw a word on the board, it's like I'm continuing to program the avatar. Although translation coming from the black fire into the white fire for some is really important, I'm feeling the weight, the kavod of who you as Anana is. So from this point forward, while we're here in this meeting, this translation work is for you to begin to see through the eyes of Anana. Now I understand about looking as it versus at it. Looking as it instead of at it. There's like a threefold, like a 3-stage. We first look at it and it's translated as tense. Okay, I'm looking at it, tense outside of me. And then you begin to look as it. Oh, so I'm the tent. Well, that's so that the ego can identify with the vibration of this in order to validate the ego. Like, your journey matters. I'm not saying that it doesn't. Your journey matters. And this is what we're trying to validate, that black fire. But the reality of it is this. Can I have that eraser? Again, just doing it differently. That's the reality. And Ken has talked about invalidation before. I don't want to get us stuck in the validation, but if one needs to be validated so they can move into invalidation, meaning I'm now feeling safe in my vessel. My vessel is safe. I've removed myself out of harm's way because it's me that is now grown up and mature.
So you trust yourself.
Exactly. Do you trust yourself? Because if you can't trust yourself, there's no way you can trust the outside world, and it will never allow you to be able to go and do the inward work to invalidate you. Because the ego has to be able to have a trust factor of the paraclete in order to be able to move into the ruka dakucha, because here's the deal. Oh my God.
This is my wrestle.
So when Hillel and Lila come in and join together in the space, and they begin to consummate, the paraclete is no longer outside of us, it's inside of us. So we got Hillel and Lila that were on the outside, and they come into the sacred chamber, and now you're embodied with Ruka Dakucha. The whole point of Ruka Dakucha is to invalidate the ego.
Through validation.
Right. But there's a level of trust that has to be in the avatar first. Like literally, the Ruka Dakucha has to come online so that you can continue to trust the process. Because if the Ruka Dakucha doesn't come online, the ego is going to continue to resist, and you're never going to get through the door. Like the ego won't bow. The ego will stay outside of the door and, put hands and feet and won't go through the door, because going through the door is invalidation. And there's so much fear that is attached to it. Okay. So tense. This is the word that we see for tense in there. And the root of it, the root of it is just the first 3 letters. So we have a cough and the yod that has been placed. So on the prefix, we have Hillel, and on the suffix, we have Lila. And then we have our Anana state in the center, which is wanting to come online. But we have to get the 2 of these to agree first. We got to get Hillel and Lila to stop warring it. The blown out olive, we need to get that to stop warring so they can turn face to face and look to each other and unify on the inside. So we have this word for tent. Now I'm sure that some of you guys have already seen this, but Aleph He Lamed, the word for tent, if we're going to take off the coffin yod, we know that that's Hillel and Lila. Let's take a look at the root of it itself. So within the root, we have Aleph and Lamed. We have the word for God there. You guys see that, right? Aleph and Lamed, we have the word for God. And then we have the He on the inside. So this word for tent is really God waiting to be revealed from the inside out. Now, we would just read it as tent, and we don't even think it, because everything's that outside protection, that projection. Here's our tent that travels around in the wilderness. This is it right here. This is your tent. You've been covered. Now, Look at the first two letters here. This is spirit breath. So I was looking at this and I'm like, how do I apply this? Because I really don't care whether or not you can translate a verse or not. Like, you can translate a verse into what you think it should read, and that's fine because it can be a Peshat level. This is what I think the translation should be. And I think that there's, you know, maybe good time and space for that to happen, but I'm wanting you to apply. I want you to apply this. I don't want you just to read it as a book, just as black fire. Oh, I'm reading it as a book. This is the way it should have been translated. Although you translating it and how you see it is how you perceive yourself. So yes, that's an important step. And if any of you aren't embracing that kind of work, that means you don't want to see yourself, because it's a really good mirror. And so if you're stuck in saying, well, I don't know if I want to translate this because I don't want to make a mistake. Well, what is that saying about you? Because that's what it's talking to you. Anana is talking to you, your ego. Well, I don't want to make a mistake. Well, who says there's going to be a mistake made? Who programmed you to believe that you are a mistake? So when we begin to work on translating it, it's the mirror. That's why there's duality in every single word. Every single word has duality in it to see where you're at in order for you to neutralize them. The ego likes to choose a side. That's how this game in Westworld works. You got to take a side. You got to pick a side. Am I good? Am I evil? Am I the hero? Am I the antagonist? Am I the protagonist? Am I a Republican, a Democrat? Yada, yada, yada. So you're going to choose a side. As soon as you start looking at those translations, you're going to choose a side as to what you see. But that's really trying to get you to see the subconscious programming that you believe about the self, the ego, that you don't want to look at. Because you have a good guy, bad guy, right? Two houses, the good house and the bad house, good and evil, the tree that got divided. If you guys were listening to my Wednesday conversation, the tree that got divided to the two houses, good and evil. So the first letter that comes onto this word is the Kaf. It was added. And the Kaf has to do with power. It has to do with grasping. But it's also a letter that means open, bend, tame, allow. Hallel, the light. Hallel means to make things of clear sound, to shine, but it also means to boast or to be arrogant. When you see this coffin has been added, what is happening to you when you look at this, when you look at the mirror? How are you going to translate that letter? How are you going to translate that? Tent. God being revealed in you. Are you going to see this as something as boasting? Like, oh, if I say that, then I'm boasting that I'm God. I can't do that. Really? So the paraclete coming from the outside, bringing an idea to you, is going to help change your mind. So the light comes in. The yod has been put on the suffix side, this masculine energy, feminine energy. The light, the dark, the good, the evil. The whole point is translating all of this into pure and innocent, the state that it always was and is. But when this energy comes in, it's saying you're going to have to work with this energy. You're going to have to open yourself up to the truth and work on your shadow side. The ego is where all the pain and suffering is. That's where all the emotions are. That's what has to be translated, because those are the things that we attach to the ego that happened to the ego. Oh, I fell in love. Oh, I was abused. Oh, I got really scared. Oh, something got stolen from me. Oh, I was beaten, bruised, and battered. Oh, I was lifted up and got a reward. That's all ego-based. That drives the heart's feelings and emotions, all of the pain and suffering, all the glory, all of that emotions, we get to experience that in this realm. And that's why it's the glory of God, because in this lower realm, we get to experience all that is and all that is not, so that we can unify them into one state called love, the absolute love. And the reason why it is the Shekinah is so that we will stop refusing and resisting all of the things that we say is evil or bad. Because as soon as you do that, guess what? It gets shored up in the ego, you make an attachment to it, and you can't move through it. It's just shoring up the ego more and more and more and more and more. I'm that pain, I'm that suffering, I'm that I got wronged. My parents sucked, my boss was awful. Or you'll shame and guilt your avatar. You don't understand, my body isn't good, my digestive system sucks, my eyes, I've got issues, I've got cancer, and you'll start shaming your avatar, which is connected to ego. It's all the same. The ego can only operate in this. That's it. So this is telling you to open yourself up and begin to work with that energy in the shade and shadow side, so that you can have God revealed from the inside out. And why do you think the tent was wandering around in the wilderness? This is called the wilderness of the peoples.
Can I morph that word?
Yeah.
Is it a good time? Can I do something?
Yeah.
So just to segue what you just said.
Yeah.
So you said, so the journey of the ego
Yeah.
is connected to.
And there was one other thing I was going to say too.
Okay, well, hopefully I won't step on you, but I want you to connect with what she's saying, because we're both coming in from this from similar but different angles for the sake of presentation. You're talking about the wilderness tent is more of a metaphoric description of you. This is the journey tent, but it's looking for a conclusion, right? So the ego is looking for a conclusion, right? It's a tent looking for a conclusion.
Yeah, which is kind of funny. It's always looking for a conclusion, but that which the conclusion it's seeking scares it to death.
Right, but yet if you're certain as trusted,
yeah,
then you know the completion of the journey. So I want to just morph this word, but I'm not going to change the letters. I want you to see this. Because when I conceive, what she just said, conception, I'm going to do something here. I'm going to take this and the conception. And then I'm going to take the hey where it was. And that's the word for temple. So when you conceive the tent and the journey of the ego, and you put this on the insides of conception, you are now absolute perfection, completed, and that's the finalization of, that's how temple is spelled, but this is the absolute temple is now established as the absolute perfection.
and the word of call here is to eat.
Yep. And again, you're
right, because whatever you're eating is opening you up or not opening you up to the inside, where you're going to be bent, allowed, and attained or tamed, so that you can become God. That's why we talk about food so much being important. Like when you're on the journey, the first thing person does is they deal with their temple. What am I putting in? What kind of food am I putting in? How am I taking it? Because if you can't have a clear mind, how can the Paraclete Hallel begin to change your mind when you're so clouded up and plugged up because you're eating crappy? You can't hear, you can't see, and then your body becomes diseased. And if your body is diseased, there is no way, because you're trying to fight to survive, to keep the temple alive, which it's already dead, because you don't really become fully alive until Anana comes online.
That vibration is even though it's perfection, it means the tent is now you went into your own tent through ego to consummate, to make temple. So hope you're seeing that, right? All I need to switch the hay in the cough to put it inside of you. You're now birthing. You are the temple birthed. And this is the third temple. This is exactly where we are. So she can write it back the way it was. But all I did is reverse the cough and the hay. And so the tonality of a sounding is in its reference. When you can conceive it, you can then yalad, birth it.
So here's the other part that I want to share with you before we move on in this word. All of He is on the middle, has to do with breathing, the inhale and the exhale. The neshama, the vital breath, the soul, is placed in the avatar. If breath leaves the avatar body, is no longer animated. So when a lot of people will spend time on breath work, if you're doing Wim Hof breathing methods or you're meditating where you're just focusing on your breath and you're clearing out your mind, it is meant to expand you to realize that that which is being revealed is God in your tent. It's this vibrational frequency of expanse, because you're focusing on the breath, spirit, Anana, instead of the ego mind trappings that are getting us to go 100 miles an hour in every single direction except inward. Be still and know Anana is God. Be still and know I am God. Like when you have a revelation of this, saying those things in English, instead of what we were programmed to believe, oh, children of God, just be still and know that something outside of me is God. Well, that is true, but be still, breathe with the breath, and know that I am God. Anana. When we take this out, we have a word that means to equip. Interesting, right?
Yeah.
To equip.
Mm-hmm.
Kaf lamed yod. To equip. But it also is the same word for bride. Kali. Now, connected to Kali. Hindu, isn't that Hindu god? Kali?
Goddess of life or death, the goddess of consumption.
So goddess of consumption, what does she do? She brings down egregores.
She wears the heads of ego around her neck.
Do you hear that? She wears the heads of ego around her neck. I want you to see the next word though. Kedar. The tense of Kedar. To be dark and darkness. Potter. Interesting. Kedar is connected to the potter. I am the potter and you are the clay. Anana. I am the potter, you are the clay. Who's the clay? What's the clay? The ego. The ego. The potter is really you, Anana. We mold and we shape the ego in the avatar by that which we choose to do while we're in Westworld. It's only shaping the ego. Let me say that one more time. It's only shaping the ego, because Anana is absolute and not changeable. It is. So everything that we do, everything that we gather, everything that we choose to put our hands to in this West world is forming the ego. That's why it's so incredibly difficult. Let's go back to the Matrix. What did Morpheus say? That it's very difficult to try to free an adult mind. Right? And what was it? Sefer was it his? Oh, he's gonna pop. He's gonna pop. He's gonna pop. Because when we've shored the ego so much, the truth and the fantastic truth of who we are is sometimes just too difficult to accept. Eye asher eye. I am, I will be, whatever I choose to be. Eye.
When I need to be.
When I need to be, where I need to be, how I need to be.
I am prophet, I am teacher.
I am limitless. Eye is limitless. Anana is a limitless. I am trying to free your mind. Neo, to be made new. I am trying to free your mind of the ego. Darkness. Darkness. Seeing through a lens, dimly lit. Some of these things are too difficult for the ego to accept, but it is that which the ego is looking for. And when it comes face to face, it scares it to death in order to be made alive. Anana. Kuf Dalet Resh. Kuf Resh on the outside. I mean, this is how it's written. So there's nothing that's added to it. There's literally nothing added to it. It's just darkness. Kuf and Resh, when they come together, is a shortened form of the word that means to call or to call out. Darkness is calling out. Why is darkness calling out? Because in order for us to get to where we want to go, we must traverse the darkness in order to get through the door to be revealed as to who we are. Aleph He Lamet. The tense of Kedar. God revealed through the darkness that's calling out to you so that you can deliver yourself from your own separation in order to have it revealed to you on the inside that you are God. You are limitless. You are limitless. But I'm going to use the black fire until you can see yourself as this, as Anana, as a whiteboard, as infinite potential that can manifest whatever it wants and do whatever it wants to, knowing that in this lower realm, everything that we create is for an experience stake, but isn't real. What do you want to do? What do you want to do as Anana? Not what do I want to do as my ego avatar? What does Carrie and all of her programming want to do today? What do I really want to do? Well, what does the ego want to do, or what does Anana want to do? Who am I asking? This next word, like the curtains. This one's a big one. Well, it's just a big word. This word, when we first see it, is in Exodus 26. And in Exodus 26, it's actually speaking of the tabernacle, the curtains of the tabernacle. So let's go back, just following along. Here we have like the tents of Kedar, like the curtains. So there's a progression that is being spoken of here. So what are these curtains? These are the curtains. If you go back and you look at it in Exodus 26:1, that has to do with the, Rick, this is going to go back to what you said at the very beginning. They were the curtains that were wove with red and blue that make purple, that were going to be crafted with the cherubim. Says that they actually sewed cherubim on the curtains. Okay. Okay. From Wednesday's teaching, 2 houses. The 2 cherubim that are facing each other on the Ark of the Covenant. It is your masculine and feminine side that are needing to come together. I've shared this with you before, that the real Ark of the Covenant, the way the picture graph and the picture of it was, they weren't touching on their wingtips. They were in a tantric position. They were joining together. And it said that above that ark was the Shekinah, the Shekinah glory. Where did the cloud by day and fire by night reside? Over the top of the tent, the tabernacle, which is this word, or these are the curtains of the tabernacle. The tabernacle was the tent, was the ohel. These are the curtains of the tabernacle that have the cherubim all over it that goes from the holy place into the Holy of Holies. Consciousness was invading without a body in the form of a cloud by day and fire by night. What was that? If you guys hung out with me on Wednesday, the woman, Barashit, olive sheen, fire, the woman, the essence of Anana that would lead them. When the cloud moved, they moved. When the fire moved, they moved. Trying to teach us something in an allegory of following the lead of Anana on the inside instead of that which the ego is wanting to do. Because the ego is dark. The ego, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do in their ego. Because if they had known what they were doing, they were killing themselves when they killed Yeshua. Forgive them, Father, they don't know what they do. Forgive them, creator, source, origin. Anana, forgive them. Do you know what he was doing? He was actually telling the ego within himself to forgive them. Because, oh my God, you cannot go to the land called up unless you wipe the slate clean. And the only way to do that is forgiveness. Starts here first. Starts here first. You have to forgive your ego, for it knows not what it does because it's seeking Anana. And there's a whole lot of shit that's done with the ego body. You know, when I was a kid, I stole. Do you know how long it took me to actually have to work through that stuff, the shame and guilt? I was at a restaurant and I was a manager and I would take money and then I would hit no sell. The person wouldn't see it. I would keep it in mind of how much money I hit on no sell. And at the end of the day, I would take that cash and put it in my pocket. I was 19 years old when I was doing this. I knew the difference between right and wrong and I still did it. I bought some nice clothes because of the money that I stole. I had to work through all of that. I had to work through all of that because at that time, I was saved when I was 8 years old. Do you know how many times I had to run to Jesus to ask him to forgive me for stealing that money? But it never cleared my conscience because I didn't forgive myself. Jesus dies for our sins for yesterday, today, and tomorrow. Did it clean out my conscience? No, it did not. I had to sweep it out. I had to get rid of all of that. I had to forgive my ego for trying. Can I get away with stealing something? Oh, let me try that. Let me see if I can pull the wool over on somebody else's. I had to forgive me. I had to forgive my ego. Let's drill down to this word. Why do you think that Yeshua could sit with the ones that they didn't want to be, the prostitutes, the tax collectors? Why do you think he could sit with them? Do you think there's a lot of stuff that maybe Yeshua even did as his ego that just isn't written about? I'm just throwing those things out there.
Oh yeah, I'm used to it. I do it all the time. It's good. It's like, oh, that's, I know. It's like, oh, how could Jesus do that?
I know. Well, guess what? It's just like us. He had to figure all of this stuff out too. And of course, I'm sure that there were probably records, and they didn't want it in the Bible because they wanted to make him like it was something unattainable. He was the only begotten son. He was only the child of God, and all of us were dirt and filth. And you got to come to the cross and you got to beg for forgiveness. That's so bunk. Be still and know I am God. Anana. So here we have this word for curtains. We got the cherubim that are meant to be face to face with one another. So the Shekinah glory, Shekinah, can be made available. But again, remember, Shekinah is the emotions that are coming from the top. We just stop judging them. They're the strong emotions. That is part of this lower realm creation and the higher realm. We just won't be creating from fear. Good segue, Carrie. This is good. Okay, I want you to see something about this word for curtains. Again, so I shared with you as a tabernacle. We've already talked about the ohel. This is all this moving through what's being said so that we can erase the board. Yara, a hanging, a shaking, or quivering slightly. Now notice that the way it's written, okay, so I'm sure that some of you have seen when you've gone in and looked at words, if you guys are actually working with the language, where you'll see it written one way, right? You'll see it written one way. And then when you start drilling down, you'll see a morphing underneath it. And then you'll see that it goes down further. You guys seen that, right? It's for some of you. You always want to take it to the root, because the root is where the energy and motion is coming from, which is going to produce a feeling, which then ends up translating into an action. Does that make sense? So the root of it is like this lump of clay of energy and motion that is waiting to create. And that with the first movement and the second and third, because some of them have a lot of movements, is taking the energy into a motion that is creating a feeling that then affects the avatar to move into action. So when we take it back to the lump of clay, the very raw energy, the chaos that is waiting to take form, what do we see in the root? Fear. Fear. Oh my God. The curtains in the tabernacle. Oh my God. Sorry. The curtains in the tabernacle were sewn with the frequency of fear. What it's saying to us is fear keeps us out of the Holy of Holies, but yet it's still glorious. When we shame and we guilt our feelings and our emotions, and we judge the two houses of good and evil, if we can take it back to the root source to see what's being said in that, it can help us to stop and sweep out all of the judgments that we have on this poor little ego. This ego is your wounded inner child. The ego is infantile. Why is the ego infantile? Because the ego only has one life to live. It never really gets to grow up. It's searching, trying to, you said that really beautifully on Wednesday when we were talking about that it's searching for its parents.
Yeah.
The ego is searching for its parents.
For divine inspiration.
Yeah, because it's a fractal that then put on a cloth of humanity that was given a name, that the memory was wiped, given an avatar body, and there's this separation that is through fear that it has to deal with. And so the very tabernacle itself was woven as it was moving from camp to camp to camp in the wilderness of the peoples, trying to find its way into the promised land. It was clothed in secrecy. I was clothed in fear from the very get-go. And I went on this really sobering journey in the land called Not, so that I could find my way home to Anana, into the Holy of Holies. You can take a look at the side of fear and see that there's a reverence for it as well. The beginning of the wisdom is the fear of God. The beginning of the wisdom is the reverence. I say that because we really need to give reverence to the journey of the avatar and the ego. Because it has served Anana well. And Anana has served the ego well. And so when they get to come to each other, there's like this bowing and acknowledgement that happens. Namaste. I can look in the mirror and say to me, Namaste. I see the light in you as it is the light that is within me. Namaste. The ego bows the head. Anana steps in line. How many of you guys have heard of walk-ins before? Yeah. The Lamed Vovniks, Lamed Vov 36. It's interesting because when you take a look at it, it's 18 times 2. And the Lamed Vovniks means those who have 2 lives. Lamed, the one that has authority, and the Vav, that is man. Anana is the Lamed, and the Vav is man. 2 lives. 2 lives in this avatar body. They're the hidden righteous ones. Well, what is hidden? Anana is hidden until you find it. Hidden until hidden no longer. It's hidden within the ego. So we're walking around in these tents of fear. Now look what is being shared here. Again, we have that beautiful cough. Remember in the word before, it was the cough and the yod with the tent, or not Qatar, but the tent and then Qatar and then curtains. The cough and the yod were added, but this time now cough and yod are on the front side. They're on the front side of this word. Well, oh my gosh, it's so hard sometimes because these things are just like going around in spiral vortex. I need to slow down. The root is yod resh ein. And that's our fear element. But we see in the middle of this, we have the resh ein here, which when you take a look at that, resh ein, let me pull up the page so that I can just show you all my cheat words. I just don't want to tax my brain in trying to do all of it and just show it to you. So we know that the root of this is fear. Take a look at what resh ein is. Bad, worthless, evil, wicked, harm, misfortune, calamity, wickedness. But then there's the other side of it. Friend, companion, associate, and fellow man. Noise and shout. And then thought, purpose, and aim. Thought, purpose, and aim. Fear is only present when you think about it. When you put your intention on it, you are aiming for it. Please let that settle. Just when you think about fear, it is present. If you don't think about it, it's not there because it isn't real. It's in the land of not. Fear is not real until you put your attention on it. And then you're aiming for it because you're thinking about it. You're giving yourself something to fear. Oh my God. Now, that is why in the center of this, we have the resh ein that also is a companion and an associate and a friend, and it's connected to the word shepherd. The friend and the associate and the companion is Anana. That leads you into the other side of this word, means to pasture, to graze. Think of Psalm 91. Think of Psalm 23. It's Anana. It's the absolute state of who we really are that leads us as the good shepherd. And it's trying to assist the ego when it thinks about the things that make it afraid. Whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, think upon these things, Anana says.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Just to segue in, because I want to come from a perspective. So we know that there's much going in the world right now, that if our vision is focused on the lesser narrative of what fear is, it will determine the outcome,
Absolutely.
because where the eyes go, the head follows. But in the higher vibration of what fear is, saying what you're saying, then our eyes would use fear as a vehicle of discernment. Fear and ego properly seen is but an opportunity to see oneself and translate through discernment. Because all it is fear says I'll never cross the road in the lesser format because there's cars on the road. But right allocation of fear says there's a gap between the cars and I can cross now because I've discerned the gap.
Mm-hmm. Mind the gap.
Right. So fear properly seen is just discernment.
So, and discernment starts with the letter bet. When we discern, it's discerning that which is on the inside of us. Discernment has nothing with us discerning the spirits outside of us, whether somebody's clean or unclean. It's meant for your inward work, so that you can have a quickening seed of life that will then do what? Binah, hokmah and binah, wisdom and understanding. Discernment is here so that you can have a quickening seed that then will reveal the shadow, the shade, the ego. That's what discernment is. It isn't for anything outside of you. It's only meant for your inward journey, so you can find Anana.
That's properly defined fear.
So what I wanted to show you on this, when we take a look at this, so we've got open yourself up to the work that you're going to have to do. There's power and a means and a direction for you to deal with your fear. But your fear is coming from the inside of you. You're going to have to work with that because it's on the inside of you that you're going to deal with it. Vav tav, very interesting that this is on the suffix side of it, because this is like a plural. This is why it says it's curtains. But it's so that we can complete the covenant of the feminine. Meaning, I'm no longer wrestling with my shadow anymore. I've completed its journey. It taught me. It raised me. It raised me up. I'm going somewhere with this. I want you to take a look at this here. Ein, Vav Tav. This would have the very similar sound of saying Ot. It would be a little bit more like in the back of Ot versus Ot. Ayin and Aleph are very close to one another. And you've heard me say this before. One is more wave and one is more particle. The Ayin is the particle form of the wave Aleph that has been now put in flesh, that is now manifested out here, so that you can see it, so that you can know it. The fountain of the landscape. In order for what? So you can turn it to become this. Aleph, Vav, Tav. A sign, a signal, a beacon, a miracle. So how do we become a sign, signal, beacon, and miracle with this word as our curtains? Turn your fear. Realize that fear is an illusion. Now, this is the aspect that got me like, oh my God, this morning when I was looking at it, because I've never been able to connect to this. Like, so much happened on the 23rd. It's like all of a sudden something turned on, and I'm like on steroids of seeing things that I couldn't see before. Resh in the paleo form. And I never understood this. Like, I'm like, why is it saying it's the back of the head? What the hell is the back of the head? You know, I would see poor and destitute, and then I would see raise it up to be the first fruit, chieftains, leaders. I'm like, okay, I'm catching that, but why the freaking back of the head? I'll tell you why the back of the head. Because I decided to look into what is in the back of the head in our brain. The cerebellum, known as the reptilian brain. The cerebellum, here's the functions. Okay, it plays a role in cognitive functions, It's involved with with movements associated and also associated with speaking. So balance issues, language. The cerebellum's functions can include and do include language, processing of emotions, attention, pleasure or reward response, and the fear response. Oh my goodness, are you kidding me? I had heard plenty of people talk about the reptilian brain and you know, okay. How many of you went down the rabbit holes in conspiracy land about the reptilians running things and people are like got flesh suits over reptilian? Get over it, people. We all do. We have a part of our brain that's called the reptilian brain that has and processes our emotions and our language and fear and the reward and punishment side. We all are reptilian, clothed with the flesh avatar. So get over it. Let's collapse all of those egregores and just sweep them out, because we all do. If you are subjected to fear, guess what? You just fired up your reptilian side. Pleasure, your reward response to pleasure. Reptilian. Using language functions, reptilian. Balancing, reptilian. I'm saying all this so we can collapse all the egregores. I'm being Callie right now to collapse all of the freaking egregores that we've attached to and have worn around our neck that has been choking off Anana. So right there in the word that has to do with fear is the resh, the back of the head. Sheen is the next letter, and then Tav. How interesting is that? Rashit. Reshin Tav, Rashit. Returning ourselves back, falling back to the beginning, to where the covenant of the woman, the covenant of the fire, burns out all of that fear element of everything that is not, so that it can move into that which is. Last word.
Use another word too.
Shlomo, Solomon. The tents of Solomon. So here we have all this imagery of the tents of Solomon. We're putting everything outside of ourselves. Remember, this is a love story. It's your love story. You, Anana. It's your love story. I loved how this love letter that was penned to me and penned to you finishes this verse with peace. What are we making peace with? Our shadow, our emotions, our strong feelings, because part of that Yara word had to do with strong emotions, strong feelings. Well, we can have strong feelings on either side of love or fear, because that's what the creation energy is in this lower density. One is fear, one is love. So when you're creating through fear, you're creating through your reptilian brain. If you're creating through love, you're creating through your higher mind. And those two strong emotions are what fuels all the feelings. So what we're doing is we're working through to make peace with all of those things. Because this word in its root, Shimla, means to be safe in mind, body, in a state, to be completed. I find it interesting that Solomon's name comes from Shalom, but Solomon's name in himself wasn't written with the Vav in it. So Shalom looks like this. It has the Vav in the middle. It has the Vav. So when he was given his name, when his ego was named as Solomon, as Shlomo, It was never given with the vav in it. Because that was Solomon's journey. He couldn't have been given that. It would have limited his expression. He was meant to find this. Like Ken says, the golden vav. He was meant to find the vav on the inside, connect. Vav is man, but it's put in the place of the heart. Connect the spirit and the material to make it completed. Then you're safe. You've removed yourself out of harm's way. I am safe in mind, body, and estate because I know. Anana huba. Anana huba. I am love. When we embrace it, you've perfected love. There is no fear. There is no fear. And the only way that we can get to this place is we must travel through the emotional side to sweep it all out. Your emotions, your feelings are revealing something to you of two camps that you're operating in. Is your tabernacle, your curtain full of fear? Because that's what's keeping you out of the Holy of Holies. You're standing on the inside and you're marveling of all of the essence of that which is inside of you. The menorah, the chakras, the seventh candle stands, it's all your energy centers. Rick was talking about this here not too long ago. And the table of showbread and the altar of the incense and all that. That is all stuff on the inside of you that you have enclosed in a flesh suit called fear. That has an egoic name on it. Why do you think that we change and our image changes and our DNA changes when Anana comes online? Because your flesh is no longer bound to fear. Fear has a limited expression. So what it's telling us is that the tents of fear need to be dealt with. It showed us that kaf yod beginning of the word for curtains, there's a burnishing, there's a brandishing, there's a polishing to a high sheen when we sweep out the fear. Then we will get to the place of where we are now safe in mind, body, and estate. Interesting that this word also is a euphemism for dead, being dead. Being asleep, this is the stuff that didn't get to translated to all of us in Christendom. The word for sleep is death. It doesn't mean you just go lay your head down and go to sleep at night, because technically you're dead. Like your flesh avatar, it passes out for the night. You're technically experiencing death already, people. You're just tasting it. I'm getting to taste what death feels like. Let me repeat that one more time. When you go to bed at night, you're actually tasting what death is like. Because your consciousness is still busy and active. Do we dream not? We do dream. Our avatar is sleeping. It's in a rested position. It's in the off mode. It's dead. And then we wake up, we get stirred, and our consciousness comes back online to wake up and revive and enliven the body so it can walk around in its avatar. But it was just dead. Rest in peace. We experience death every single night when we go to sleep. And then we wake up and we enliven ourselves and we're back in active role in Westworld. When we die in the flesh is when an Anana comes online and you stop identifying with the ego. When I am fully embodied as Anana in my avatar, I am flesh man and I am spirit man, unified as one, as Anana. I don't identify with the ego anymore. That's why I make jokes now and I'll say, and I've been saying it for a while and I didn't understand why I was saying it. I would say, Okay, Carrie, what are you talking about? Why are you bringing this up? I was beginning to talk in third person. And I would just say, it was like a natural evolvement. Okay, Carrie, why are you talking about this? Why is it important? Because there was a movement that was already beginning within me that I still hadn't fully seen yet, that I was choosing to be in that Anana space when I was sharing with all of you, recognizing that ego is third person. It's not me. Anana, Anana Huba. So when we go through this, we adopt the lamed on the middle. Lamed is authority. It's the shepherding staff, but that's Anana. I'd always had identified that lamed with being a person of authority. Carrie's got authority now. Because I can teach and people are listening to Carrie. No, it's Anana that has authority. It's not Carrie. Carrie's the servant. Anana's the master. So when we travel through the water and the fire, when we travel through the masculine and the feminine energies, and they unify in the middle, then the master, the authority, the one who is really in authority comes online. And we experience peace. We experience rest. We experience death. But we don't kill the ego. The ego just bows. It bows out. We don't kill it. That's spiritual violence. If you guys want to know what spiritual violence is when you try to kill your freaking ego. Just simply allow Anana to come online. And when Anana comes online, the ego just bows out of the way. It's like, oh my God, that's what I've been looking for. Now you're going to have a scary moment when you come face to face with Anana. To say anything different than that would be a lie. And the reason why is because the ego comes face to face with Anana. And it has to bow out. It cannot stand in the face of Anana. It has to bow. It has to bow. The lesser gives way to the greater. And that is why the Shekinah is added to this word. Because the Shekinah is when it is finally revealed. Is finally revealed. And Lila can look at Hillel and go, oh, we are one. We are Anana. We are one. I'm not Lila, and you're not Hillel. We're Anana. We're Anana. Silly me that I ever thought that we were separated. And that's how this verse ends. This is why I say that when you get to the end of all of this, you just do this. Anana, infinite potential. And Nana is everything and nothing all simultaneously in the same time, in the same place, past, present, future. Eye and Nana Huba. And you know what? Darn it, it feels too good to be animated in my body. I quite enjoy it. I used to be embarrassed for my antics and talking with my hands all the time and doing silly things. You know what? I love doing it for the sake of just doing it. I'm having fun in my avatar body now. I'm having fun. I'm not shaming any of it. Nothing that I do. I think it's funny. I think everything that this avatar thing does is funny. I have finally found the place where I enjoy my avatar Carrie. She's wickedly funny. She's hysterical. She can be sad. She can be afraid. She can have joy and bubble up all over the place. She can have a good old party time just by herself. And she can be miserable. And she can be depressed. And it's for my entertainment. It's for my entertainment. My ego and my avatar is for my Anana's entertainment. I don't need anything outside of this avatar. I am entertained all the time now. When is she going to go to bed? When is she going to get up? What does she want to eat? Where is she going to go? What is she going to do today? What kind of conversations is she going to have? Oh my God, this is so fun. Oh. I am praying that after today that I've helped change your mind. Because when we begin to think about these things and allow them to drop into our heart and realize who we really are, if you haven't found that place yet, keep working. Just keep working at it. I'm not saying to strive at it, because that's actually part of that word for fear and curtains. It has to do with striving. I'm not saying striving. It is a natural evolution, you guys. It is a natural evolution. If we stop resisting, just don't resist. Don't hang on so tight. Allow the emotions to flow through you. Allow all the traumas of yesterday just to simply flow down the river of time. Let go. Let go. Because you know who's going to catch you? Anana. Anana will catch you. Just let go. It'll be okay. Promise you. Because when you cross over, what are we crossing over? We're not crossing over to a promised land named Israel. I've been there, done that. They can have the land. I went up. That's the crossing over. And then everything shall be added unto you. Haliva.